Who wants to go to Spain? Food poisoning? Sleepless nights? Oh, no. Come to sunny Hunstand. This is the place to be.
The seaside holiday has become one of the great British institutions. We have flocked to our shores to eat, swim, party, dance, sing, scare ourselves, take our clothes off, sleep, fight, and find romance.
It's very much part of the holiday experience. You know, it would be a sad holiday if you didn't get drunk, you didn't have a hangover, or you didn't eat too much food, or you didn't have a one-night stand. It's to do with indulgence.
No wonder they called it the Pleasure Beach. This is the story of how Britain finally threw off Victorian constraint and created the seaside, a place where the normal rules don't apply.
The seaside has been an almost never-ending source of innovation in people's behaviour and preferences. It's where you encounter new fashions, new kinds of entertainments, and it's where you try new identities out.
At the beginning of the 21st century, the British seaside seems to be in almost terminal decline. Peeling paint, filthy beaches, and a poor and ageing population have sent British holidaymakers packing. Yet our love affair with seaside holidays apparently goes on.
What draws people to the seaside in Britain now is the illusion of a sort of liberty.
The seaside is all about boundaries. It's what we call a liminal place. And this word liminal comes from the Latin word limen, which means a threshold. And the beach is a liminal place because it's a kind of a threshold. It's a threshold between the land and the sea.
So it's a shifting place, a place of shifting identities. And that means that almost anything can go. It means that people are much more likely to do things they wouldn't do in other places, and particularly to relax, to be informal, to remove items of clothing, because it's this kind of nobody's land, and therefore the usual constraints on behaviour are suppressed.
It was the Victorians who first popularised the British seaside holiday. They believed the sea had restorative and health-giving properties. Sea bathing became fashionable.
They were supposed to be very prim, weren't they, the Victorians, but I don't think they were, because, I mean, you come out of a bathing machine, a man comes out with this, you know, the long costume on. The lady comes out and another next to it, and they are frolicking about in the water. So I mean, you know, it was a rather ridiculous idea to think they never got together. Oh no, they're separated. You see, no, they never mix. As soon as they're in the water, they're all mixing, and probably changing cubicles when they came out. I wouldn't wonder.
Bathing in the sea made us feel freer, and soon we had had enough of Victorian constraint.
The great transition of the first third of the 20th century is from the bathing machine to the bathing hut, and to tolerance of what was called Macintosh bathing, wearing your bathing suit under your Mac and having already changed in your lodgings, or of course of that ritual of undressing on the beach and trying to prevent other people looking at private bits of your body by manipulating towels and wind shelters and all sorts of things. And that, of course, is freeing people up to enjoy the sea in a much more recreational way. It's not just about health anymore, it's increasingly about splashing about, and it's about being able to mix the sexes and have family parties and wear swimsuits, which get smaller and smaller and reveal more and more of the body.
Holidaying by the sea had been enjoyed by all classes since the turn of the century. But some resorts, like Blackpool, had been adopted by the working class.
Here we have vivid pictures of the biggest strike that mill country's ever known. No mules spinning and no looms weaving. And I did hear say there was no trams running neither. There's Summit up with Summit. I know what it is, I've just remembered. It's Wakes Week. The entire population is basking and bathing at Blackpool.
I think it must have been very strange to spend 50 weeks working with people and getting to know them. And then for 2 weeks of your holiday, the entire town moved en masse to Blackpool. So you really spent your entire working life and holiday life together.
By the 1930s, resorts like Blackpool had acquired a well-earned reputation for kiss-me-quick decadence and the end of the pier variety.
The heyday of seaside entertainment was between the wars, the First World War and the Second World War. Certainly Blackpool with its tower and the ballroom, which was terribly popular with tea dances and things like that.
Thousands upon thousands of couples met in the Tower Ballroom. So you'll find a lot of marriages. In fact, my own parents, my father was a serviceman and my mother and father met in the Tower Ballroom, and I'm still here. So it was a very important time, I think. And it gave that reason again for people to come back and visit the resort. There is, I think, a nostalgia about seaside resorts. Somebody's met somebody in a seaside resort.
I think sex and the seaside have always been linked, but the link is much stronger from the early 20th century with the What the Butler Saw machine, with the end of the pier show, and with particularly, I think, the comic postcard, although that really is much more about feelings of male sexual inadequacy, I think, and also really promotes the idea that the seaside is about sex.
Ah, Mr. McTavish, I see you have some ginger nuts.
Those aren't the marshmallows, Fred.
Do you keep stationery, miss?
No, love, I wriggle a bit.
The card world is a cross between a schoolyard and a cosmic zoo. It's scattered with little men concealing their private parts from the derision of their own sex, let alone that of women.
We can't expect the lamp of love to burn fiercely at our age, lass.
No, but there should at least be a glow from the pilot light.
Has Ted gone mad, Brenda?
Yes, and so would you if you'd spilled your tea where he spilled his.
Are any of us really like it says on the cards? Yes, a bit. Otherwise, why should they sell so many?
The seaside allowed people to push the boundaries of ordinary experience. They saw thrills, spills, titillation, and the bizarre.
If you look back at Blackpool's history, when the vicar was pickled in a barrel on the promenade, and you could go and look at newlyweds who spent sort of 24 days behind glass without actually being able to touch each other, there's always been a fascination, I think, for people to see the bizarre and something they wouldn't see in everyday life. It's almost a peculiarity that people have on holiday, that you want to be able to go and spy on something you couldn't do if you're actually at home.
I think part of this fascination with horror tunnels and all that kind of thing is that people are actually wanting to find out more about that dark side of our personality. They probably don't know how to do it in an inner way, so they're actually doing it in an outer way. And of course it's fun.
But not every aspect of the seaside was fun. Back at their lodgings, holidaymakers soon discovered that the seaside harboured its own instruments of repression.
Dinner's at 7:15, except for Mondays when there's a high tea at 6:30. If you'd like a drink before dinner, there's a bottle of sherry, but I don't encourage it.
Is there any chance of a cup of tea, Miss Wilbraham?
Tea was at 4:45.
The idea that the seaside landlady is a dragon is already emerging in late Victorian times, and it becomes absolutely a cultural stereotype of the 20th century. And it arises, I think, partly because the landlady is a woman in a position of authority. And she's in a position of authority not only over her husband, but also over people who are wanting to enjoy themselves.
Rule 37. All boarders must be in by 11 o'clock sharp. Those who fail to come in on time will be locked out. Rule 38.
And she was stereotyped as a dragon, I think essentially, because as with so much else at the seaside, she was defying gender stereotypes by being in charge.
You can come in at any time of the day or night, but you'll have to submit to an intimate body search by my husband. We do like you to be out of your rooms between 10 and 11, as that's when I like to go through your luggage. Early morning showers are between 7 and 8. Just sign the flannel book, fill in some hot water requisition forms and get them ratified by the Court of Human Rights. And if you fancy a bath after your evening meal, I wouldn't be at all surprised.
But the landladies were a small price to pay for all the fun of the seaside. And when the Conservative government introduced holidays with pay in 1939, the crowd swelled.
Hello there. Well, this year we've got holidays with pay. Look at it. Woo! Isn't that lovely?
Holidays with pay. Who says the world doesn't progress?
13, 14.
Not every business pays this premium yet, but a beginning has been made, and what has long been the privilege in offices will become the rule in factories. Anyway, the holiday exodus has begun, so a happy time to all of you.
It seemed nothing could stop the party. But though the war brought seaside holidays to a halt, once it was over, people headed to the resorts in their millions to let their hair down. Over the hot summer of 1946, the beaches were so crowded, the government actively discouraged holidaymakers from going.
Are you wanting a rest away from the nest? A holiday down by the sea? Do you fancy reclining and wining and dining and eating ice cream for your tea? You do? You lucky people. In July or August? You suckers. Then you'll queue for the train till you wilt with a strain. And you'll queue for a seat on the pier. You'll go to a pub, but here comes the rub. They put up a notice, no beer. Then you'll go for a bathe, but you'll queue for each wave. You'll wish that you never left home. Do you still want to go? Right. Now, you don't want to hustle, to rush or to bustle, or you'll come back like me, looking haggard. The rule is, remember, go in June or September. Miss the crowds, and then you'll be staggered. Staggered, get it?
Despite the efforts of Tommy Trinder, the popularity of seaside holidays was such that beaches became more and more crowded. But those who tried to escape by trying something a little different at holiday camps like Butlins got more than they bargained for.
This is Radio Butlin calling. Campers are requested not to play ball games of any kind in the chalet lines, as this is apt to disturb neighbours in nearby chalets.
They did have loudspeakers, and you had your wakey to get everybody up at a certain time, and then everything was pretty well disciplined through the day. There were huge numbers. There were thousands of people there, and so the skill was to do it in a way which really seemed quite light-hearted, but really was actually controlling what people did. And there was an instance in one of the Butlins where one of the managers got the idea of doing a kind of a conga at the end of the evening, and everybody joined in and found they were sort of congering out of a bar. So that was a way of emptying the bar. There were little tricks, but there's no doubt at all that people were quite strongly manipulated.
Hello, and it's a very good afternoon to each and every one in the House of Kent. The remainder of your afternoon programme is exactly as printed. So go out and enjoy yourselves, have a good time, and until we see you later then, this is George saying bye-bye.
The eating experience really was amazing. I mean, you have these dining rooms that would hold maybe 1,000 people, and they do 2 sittings on both lunch and dinner. And of course the food was generally pretty appalling. You have to remember that when Butlins first started out after the war, the idea that you could eat as much meat as you wanted, or you could have hot water without actually being rationed, or hot water at the turn of a tap, was an incredible breakthrough for most working class people. So the things that you and I now may think aren't very attractive, like chicken and chips at Butlins, all those years ago, would have been incredibly appealing.
Life at the camps was regimented, but it was also fun.
Well, at Butlins, of course, you got all those competitions, you know, wobbly knees, glamorous grannies, and all these were great things to photograph. And they're all part, I guess, of our heritage. They're all part of what we think about with, you know, having this good time almost forced upon us.
The real test for this, of course, is to feel the knot. The knees only, gentlemen. So, ladies, skirts up, please. Skirts up. Gentlemen, would you go and sing them feel along the line?
But it always works, that's the thing. I mean, you can't believe how manufactured and traditional and corny it all is, but once people get a few drinks inside them in the evening or in the afternoon and they've got nothing much to do and they're getting the knees out and people start laughing, I mean, it always works. That's the thing. It's a great formula that never fails.
30 years on, the Butlins formula was captured on television.
Ready, steady!
Heyday High was created by two ex-redcoats.
Jimmy Perry had been a redcoat. David had produced shows for Butlins, so they had an idea for Heyday High, and it was basically the foundation of it was very true. They were very well-drawn characters.
Go to the holiday rock.
At Gibson's, they get their camp entertainment from their camp entertainment manager, Gladys the Gibson Girl.
Make the world go away and get off my shoulder.
At Sunshine, it's your very own canary that sings to you.
And make the world go away.
While red and yellow coats played at being stars, by the late 1950s, the biggest resorts now had the money to attract the real thing.
Ladies and gentlemen, I have now very great pleasure in asking Miss Jean Mansfield to switch on the autumn illuminations of 1959.
And there they go. Flash bulbs, maroons and all. And this year's surprise, a portrait of Jane Mansfield herself in lights. Then the front of the town hall in purple and gold and the red roses of Lancashire.
That's the most fantastic thing I've ever seen in my life. I'm completely speechless. Oh, thank you so very much, all of you. It's completely breathtaking. I'm without words.
Resorts like Blackpool became infatuated with the glitz, the glamour of show business, much to the distaste of middle-class holidaymakers who turned their backs on the bright lights in search of a different seaside dream. They were after their own seaside myth, one in which children poked around in rock pools on endless sunny days. This myth originated in Victorian literature, but was massively reinforced by illustrations and stories from the first half of the 20th century, and especially by the stories of Enid Blyton.
I like doing what boys do. Climbing, swimming, sailing boats. Look, they're signalling.
They reflected a particularly atypical time in Britain, when Britain was rather stagnant, rather pacific after the Second World War, when there was this idea of rooting around in rock pools with a net. But it was a very short period, I believe. You could probably make a case that the people who today take their children to St Mawes or Port Cotton are victims of a sort of nostalgia for a childhood which they either did enjoy for a few years or more likely read about.
My wife and I, and our daughter Valerie, age 15, are staying here for a week's holiday. The reason why we go to the seaside rather than perhaps the country is mainly due, I suppose, to an ingrained habit which grows with one from childhood. When we were children, we always went to the sea, and it becomes, as I say, a habit which continues as one grows older.
Hello, oh, Mr. Punch, put that stick down. I've got a little job for you.
But even in the 50s, children seeking such excitement and entertainment as these resorts could offer found themselves running up against the essential conservatism of local authorities.
Now, gentlemen, we come to minute number 242. This concerns the renewal of the privilege of operating the Peter Pan Railway on the sands.
Madam Chairman, as a lifelong resident of this town, I maintain Broadstairs does not want this kind of entertainment. We definitely can do without this exploitation, and I consider this is only the thin end of the wedge. And if we allow this thing to continue, we shall presently have a fun fair, possibly coconut shies, and all the various things which go with this type of entertainment.
Teenagers were becoming increasingly frustrated by their parents' very different idea of a good seaside holiday.
What are we going to do?
What do you mean, what are we going to do?
I mean, what is there east of Ipswich?
And some of the most unspoiled and beautiful coastal scenery in the country.
I want to go somewhere spoiled. We always go to Torquay.
Well, we all need a change from time to time, and we've chosen Suffolk.
And Suffolk it shall be.
What about the Crazy Golf? And Mrs. Shepherd's? And Louise at the tea bar, who always gave us double helpings.
Well, if you just go on holiday for the waitresses.
By the mid-60s, this frustration had turned to anger.
People try to put us to down. Talking about my generation. Just because we get around. Talking about my generation. Things they do look awful. Talking about my generation.
This year was the year of the mods and rockers and of the hooliganism, vandalism and fighting which often walked with them.
They were just bored. They went to the seaside and thought, what did Mum and Dad ever... They raved about this place. I mean, I can't make it out. There's a lot of sand and a lot of water and that's it. You know, where's the entertainment? Where are the birds? It was a different generation.
We can't just stand there and let a lot of kids take the mick out of you, can you?
So what do you do?
Well, you're going to have a punch up about it.
What do you fight with?
With fists. If you get out of a bottle, you get out of a bottle.
Some fights are justifiable, are they?
Oh, yes. In some cases, well, they just know the way out, it's that fine.
Trying to cause a big sensation. I'm just talking about my generation.
The mods and rockers phenomenon, of course, was really a pathological one. Choosing to meet at the seaside particularly as a public holiday to have, in effect, culture wars between different segments of youth culture. That suggests the continuing importance of the seaside to popular culture, which in turn did damage to the image of the seaside resorts as safe and comfortable and family places.
While some youth cultures saw the seaside as a battleground, others embraced the surf. Far-sighted resorts like Newquay saw the economic potential of youth culture and used surfing to reinvent themselves for a new generation.
A beach at sundown has a dreamlike quality about it, a kind of lonely magic all its own. This time of day, this atmosphere brings home the fact that surfing is a compulsion of sorts. When the Atlantic swell is running and the wind is offshore, the wave riders stay at it until darkness falls. It was to these beaches at Newquay just 7 years ago that some visiting Australians brought down the first Malibu boards. Then there were 2 or 3. Now, each morning, anything up to 400 boards arrive to challenge the 7 miles of Newquay surf. Perhaps because of the clean-cut image of the sport and of those who ride the waves, the local council have encouraged it. This must be the only town in England where you can hire a Malibu board as well as a deck chair.
A person coming down here for the first time wishing to take up surfing could hire a board for as little as £4 a week. And after that, they have to find their accommodation. They can live in a caravan. They can get very cheap lodging here. So for about £10, they can have an all-in surfing holiday for 1 week down here.
Doug Wilson, known as the surfing king of Newquay. His enthusiasm has encouraged its growth in Britain and helped build up a local industry to meet the needs of the wave riders.
Oh, 1, 2, 3, jam!
Some residents of Newquay dislike this invasion of tough young men with their odd way of dress, but there's no mistaking the new life they've injected into an old town.
Bizarrely, 70s TV chose to fall back on nostalgia by reviving the old Butlins formula of beauty competitions and variety.
Hello and welcome to breezy Blackpool.
The old song and dance routines were surprisingly successful, and when the bathing beauties came on, millions tuned in.
Tonight, live from Blackpool. Miss United Kingdom 1973.
Good evening, and a very warm welcome, and I mean that, once again to Blackpool. Well, in the next 50 minutes, those of us here in the Locarno Ballroom and those of you, the millions of you watching at home on television, are going to know which girl is going to succeed Jenny McAdam and become the new Miss United Kingdom.
Miss Bolton is 20.
Big audiences watched Miss UK on TV, but the truth was they were starting to look further afield for their holidays.
The change in resorts came with mass foreign tourism. A place like Benidorm became as cheap as, say, Southsea. And it was a lot hotter, the food was nicer, and there was probably an even greater notion of lack of inhibition because you were further from home.
Do you think at the back of their minds they have some idea about finding some sort of Latin lover or something like that?
No, I don't think so. You know, it's just inevitable. I mean, it's all part of the holiday. It's taken in like a suntan. You've got the facilities here. It's so easy. Take a bottle of Bacardi for £8 bob back to your hotel and you're made. I mean, a bottle of Bacardi in England, what's that, about £2? In the back of the Mini, it's not the same atmosphere, really, is it?
British resorts realised they were losing out to the foreign competition, so their answer was to bring the exotic home.
The unmistakable shape of Spain. The hat, not the girl. She's as British as her slogan on Blackpool Beach. He's British too, reading all the spicy news of Sunday's world, only now the beach has changed and we're in Benidorm. No, Benidorm is in Blackpool. Blackpool, where, you've guessed it, the restaurants are Spanish, and where you can shop for Spanish souvenirs.
But by the late 1970s, millions were seeking adventure elsewhere, taking cheap package holidays abroad, and inevitably, British holiday camps and seaside resorts began the long plunge into decline.
In the late 70s, it's more to do with older people, because it's they that keep the seaside in Britain still going. I mean, there are young people come, but it's really the older people who haven't got used to the idea of the package holiday that are its mainstay.
You come to the right place.
It's a typical English resort, is it?
Yes, lovely, mate, yes. This is the place to come to, Hunstanton. When the weather's fine, mate, this is the place to be.
And when the weather's bad?
It's still the place to come to.
But don't you think people prefer to go to Spain where they're going to get some sunshine?
No. Who wants to go to Spain? Food poisoning? Sleepless nights? Oh, no. Come to sunny Hunstanton. This is the place to be.
A lot of institutions in Britain in the 1950s and 60s failed to recruit the next generation of young people. As part of that pattern, a lot of seaside resorts failed to recruit the next generation. And what tended to happen was that people who'd been to vibrant, developing, innovative resorts in the 30s in their youth then retired to them and brought about the development of Costa Geriatricas, which at the same time, of course, led to populations of people on fixed incomes who desperately didn't want to see increased local taxation, especially to pay for new kinds of holiday industry activities that they didn't like. So they're almost pulling up the ladder after them and wanting to discourage new holiday industry initiatives.
Some resorts came up with rescue packages that didn't go down well with the older generation.
Hornsey would hardly seem the kind of place, and the North Sea would hardly seem the kind of water to attract sunseekers. Well, the British Naturalist Council searched Britain from Wick to the Isle of Wight to find a place where they could caress their bodies on a public beach. Finally, they came here to hospitable Hornsey. Last week, the council, on a vote of 8 to 3, decided to open the doors of the town to nudes.
What difference does it make covering the private parts up to the health? I ask you that much. Not the slightest.
Things are coming, really, that there's nothing private at all.
I think it's objectionable.
No, would you tell me why?
Well, because I think there's all this sex and every wretched thing, more and more of it.
What is there about nudists which you think would
I'm
undermine
telling you,
the
it'll
character?
attract the wrong class of person. The hooliganism. Give extra work to the police, drinking and everything else. You'll get all the scoundrels out of hell coming.
Perhaps the residents of Hornsey were terrified their small town was going to end up like Blackpool, which had embraced 80s hedonism by taking what the butler saw to its logical conclusion.
If it's your birthday, you get you up on the stage and he dances around you with hardly anything on. And
well, he's got nothing on at all except for a cockerel over his private, and he sort of dances around you singing that song. Has anybody seen?
Squeezing
anybody
water in,
seen?
yeah.
Yeah, squeezing water in your face, and then they do the gangbang. That's where everyone lines up, all the bar staff.
The person in the middle whose birthday it is gets,
yeah.
you know,
and then you
dances
sway
away.
side to side singing another song. Saying, we're having a gangbang, we're having a ball.
Here we go, here we go, here we go!
By the 90s, holiday makers had become the modern equivalent of the saucy postcard.
Here we go, here we go! Are you filming me? There, I'll show you my boat. Right. Woo! Go and have a look! Woo!
But something much more alarming was lurking in the waves.
14 out of 15 of Britain's most popular beaches are harbouring viruses that can cause anything from stomach upsets to meningitis, according to a survey by the Consumers Association. At beaches in Blackpool, the results of tests were so bad that the association has warned people not to swim there.
The Consumers Association tested the water of 15 beaches around Britain, including this one at Blackpool, where thousands of holidaymakers swim every year. The water was tested for viruses and bacteria, and the results showed that just one of the beaches, Bexhill, was free of the viruses which can cause stomach upsets or even more serious diseases like meningitis and hepatitis.
With the sea poisoned and the tourist trade down, resorts sank to an all-time low.
Most of those resorts are dying, and what trade they have is daily. People will go for a day to Clacton or to Margate or to Southend. They seldom stay there, with the result that the properties which were originally built as boarding houses tend to be DS hostels, places where asylum seekers can live and so on.
Not only resorts were affected, the millions of people who'd embraced the regimented fun of holiday camps in the 50s were now tired of the old formula. Bigger companies like Butlins realised the chips were down. They had to change or die. Butlins' great new idea was basically a roof.
The main feature of these centres will be the new Skyline Pavilion, which will allow us to give the public holidays all the year round, protected from the weather elements.
Now it seems the best seaside holiday you can have is one without the sea. Inland holiday parks, pioneered by Centre Parks, are the modern take on the old holiday camp idea.
Centre Park is, in one sense, you can see where it comes from. What they're offering is much higher grade accommodation and more individualised experience than holiday camps did. I mean, you don't get a wakey call and this sort of thing. So they offer families an all-in holiday, but equally they offer the opportunity for families to be on their own and to go out in their car for the day.
Meanwhile, large resorts like Blackpool are still trying to reinvent themselves.
I know a lot of people have talked about how Blackpool might turn into Las Vegas. I don't think we're trying to actually recreate the strip here in Blackpool. What we are saying is that resort casino hotels would be something different, and because of the uniqueness of the town, would be able to be delivered here, unlike perhaps other resorts that don't have that area that's available to actually build those style of casino hotels. It needs to work in conjunction with everything else, though. There's no point walking out of a casino hotel and the streets aren't attractive, or the promenade area isn't nice, or the whole thing has to work in partnership to deliver it. But yeah, I must admit my staff are learning how to run a roulette wheel just in case.
I think the British seaside will continue to decay to a certain extent. Certain places like Blackpool will obviously overcome this because they'll build a whole set of things like casinos to get a different kind of crowd in. But yes, I imagine the decay will continue, and long may it do so. I love the fact you have this great expression of the decline of Britain, from this once superpower that ruled the world into a small country on the edge of Europe.
But to some extent, this lost Britain lives on at the seaside. Middle-class resorts with their beach huts and rock pools are the surprise success story.
What has happened more recently is that a different sort of resort has begun to flourish. A sort of middle-class resort, Padstow, St Mawes, Southwold, Burnham Market and so on, places where it's obligatory to wear deck shoes.
In these places, one kind of seaside idyll shows every sign of surviving.
Weekdays are about pressure and timetables,
about Roger's got to be at work, board meetings constantly, the kids at school runs, who they're travelling with today, what homework they've got to do, what after-school activities, and then homework, it seems, till they drop.
You've got to make it sound like... Then we drift off into this nice candy pink cloud down to the other house where it all becomes friendly, nobody shouts at anybody, the children the children like each other, they don't fall off their bikes. And we do that until about sort of Sunday afternoon, and then the big black cloud comes back and we have to go back to London.
It is like that.
Coming down here, it's like returning to my childhood. I enter that world of make-believe in a way.
I think it's more and more difficult for the British seaside to sustain distinctiveness when so many of its old attributes can be found elsewhere. And I think what it really does have to do is play on nostalgia and a sense of history and a sense that this has been one of the great British industries and that it's worth celebrating alongside coal and cotton as a kind of living museum with opportunities to do your own thing within it.